Hello, everybody, it's Tim here again, here with another commentary, this time finally for Friday the 13th, Part 2. Now, once again, if you want to link up with me, set your timestamp to 0, which is exactly what I'm at, and we'll count down from 3, 2, 1, pressing play, now. Now, like I said in the last commentary for Friday the 13th Part 1, my thoughts had pretty much changed on Friday the 13th Part 1. I still like the movie, but instead of giving it like a 4 out of 4, like masterpiece level score or whatever, um, I'd give it a solid 3 out of 4 at this point. I thought it was a good movie. It's a good slasher flick. It is one of the best and better slasher flicks, but it's not on the level of like the original Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween, but it is a good slasher movie. Friday the 13th Part 2, I will already go ahead and say I actually enjoyed this more than Part 1. I'd give this a 4 out of 4. I actually think that this is a great sequel. I actually like it better than Part 1. It does mostly kind of repeat some of the same beats of the first one, but overall, though, I just enjoy Jason more. And this is not like one of my absolute favorite Jasons, but I do like this Jason. And I like the sack over the head. I think it's creepy. Of course, we got an introduction here to Jason as he steps out into this puddle. And I believe for this opening shot, as others have probably heard already on special features and stuff like that, Jason's actually played by a woman, which is pretty cool. At least for that one scene. Or one shot, I should say. But yeah, one cool thing I always liked about these early Friday the 13th movies, or the first, like, even 7 or 8, is that they always, like, try to link up to the movie beforehand, or the movies beforehand that came out before the one that you're watching. Sorry about that, I had a cough. But yeah, I always like that they try to link up or catch the viewer up to speed about what happened before. I mean, of course, by the time you get to like part 8, you're like, well, if you're on a part 8, you know the drill here pretty much. They bring back Alice from the last movie, the Survivor girl. It's cool to have her back, even though her character really doesn't do much here. I've always fans always speculate like, how did Jason find Alice? How did Jason find Alice? Like Jason is like this quasi supernatural being, so it never really like blew me away or really surprised me or made me overly contemplate like how Jason found Alice. Like Jason is even in these early movies is still pretty much like supernatural ish. So it's like I just figured he just like I mean, just randomly found her somehow. I mean, I never really needed like some kind of deep explanation about how Jason found Alice or where she lives or whatever. Cool that they show flashbacks to Mrs. Voorhees. I will say these flashbacks do go on a bit too long because they pretty much like flashback to the entire freaking third act of the last movie. Great performance by Betsy Palmer from the last movie. Flashbacks to little boy drowning Jason, of course, from the last film. Making Jason extremely sympathetic. Of course, Jason is the villain, and you don't really root for Jason, but at the same time, you kind of understand where Jason's coming from. I mean, he was left to drown, and his mother, tried to get revenge for his death, and she died as well. And that's the other thing, of course, like bringing Jason back as the killer for this movie was not planned at all. The studio pretty much said they wanted it because of the jump scare ending of the first film, so they're like, well, just make it work. Just bring him back, whatever, fuck it. So, um, so yeah, it is kind of funny how that worked out. Yeah, bringing Jason back, though, is an interesting idea, and in the long run, it obviously proved to work. When they did this film, though, they had like Steve Miner directed, who was like the first protege of Sean Cunningham. He also did the movie House, which is a great like haunted house classic, and he did Halloween H2O, which Halloween H2O I will say is I actually enjoy that film more now than when I actually reviewed it back in the day. I'll have to talk about that whenever I get to the Halloween commentaries eventually, but I actually enjoy that film now more. But he also did the awful Day of the Dead remake, which was atrocious with Mina Sorvino. That was friggin' awful. And Nick Cannon. But yeah, he directed Friday the 13th Part 2 and 3. But yeah, Steve Miner, he's a very interesting person because he seems happy with the two Friday the 13th movies he worked on. He seems overall satisfied. But at the same time, though, he would like hardly speak about these movies. Like the only time I've ever seen him talk about him is in the new Scream Factory like box set, which I recently bought. He actually is interviewed and he about all of his movies, and he mentions the Friday 13th films that he worked on. That's like the only time I've ever seen him talk about these films. I have no idea why, like what he maybe has against working on these films. What I don't really know because I'm like, dude, you did the Day of the Dead remake, which is completely awful, and you talk about that, but you won't talk about these. That's just weird. Maybe he had like some bad personal experience working on these or something. I don't know. There's no way for me to know that because, well, I wasn't there. But yeah, that's just weird. Of course, a replay to the ending of the first movie with the jump scare with little boy Jason to remind people of Jason and that awesome jump scare that everybody loved. Because, well, we're bringing Jason back to be the killer. But yeah, the whole thing about Jason coming back as the killer, they leave it kind of vague here about how Jason is back or whatever, so it's still kind of up to your imagination about somewhat about how Jason came back. But they also do throw out a theory here for you to go by if you only take the first film and then this film in the continuity. Like, you gotta remember, at the time, there were no other films, so if you're just watching part one, then this one, then the idea that the director throws out here is that Jason, like, survived his drowning. That he did drown, basically, but he managed to survive it. And him being mentally handicapped, he just ran off into the woods, scared and lonely, and grew up in the woods, because, well, he's just a scared, mentally handicapped boy. And then he saw his mom get her head chopped off because she thought that he was truly dead. But come to find out he wasn't, and now he's coming back for revenge for his mother and for his drowning. So yes, in a way that is far fetched, but also in a way it works fine in 80s horror movie logic. Like it's not that big a deal. Nowadays, it wouldn't fly unless they gave a little bit more explanation to it or treated it more like an urban legend type thing where they just threw out ideas about how Jason came back but never really gave like a concrete answer. Um, that's kind of what they do in most of these films. Like they really don't explain what Jason is. They just throw out little hints and ideas about what he could be or what he is into most of these films until you get to Jason Goes to Hell where they pretty much fully explain it, which of course we'll get to eventually. I actually like Jason Goes to Hell. Don't love it, but I do like it for what it is. But yeah, at this point, Jason's just kind of like this urban legend thing is what they're treating him as. Truthfully, if you wanted to, you could just see the first movie as a prequel and not even really watch it and just go straight to this film for the Jason story and just start from here and go on if you just aren't really interested in Mrs. Voorhees. But I do think you should watch part one. But I mean, for me personally, I enjoyed part one. But at the same time, if you're just more of a Jason fan, all that, and just want to get to Jason, you could easily just start with this flick because they fill you in perfectly, and you could just like go from here on. I do like the fact that they show Alice's paintings and stuff in the background. That's pretty cool. Of course, because they established that she liked to paint in the last movie, so that's kind of cool. I like that. I like when they carry on like little characters, quirks and stuff like that from other films and all that. Because once again, these are 80s slasher films. Like you're not going to get like some deep thought breaking character or whatever. But at the same time, the characters in these films are not bad. Some of them, yes, are more stereotypical than others, and by the time you get to like part 8, they are pretty rote. But at the same time, though, the best characters in these films are pretty decently written for this type of movie. I do think the acting is an improvement in this one overall over part 1 as well. Of course, she gets a phone call at home, and there's no answer on the other end. And people have theorized that maybe that's Jason or whatever. Of course, this whole phone call thing is like taken from stuff like Halloween and When a Stranger Calls and Black Christmas and all that. That little phone call spook. But people have like said, did Jason call Alice at home? Like, you don't really have to see that as Jason. That really could have just been, like, her mother or something, like, calling and then got distracted by something else and had to, like, hang up real fast. But it really doesn't have to be Jason. It could just be something someone else did to, like, set a moody atmosphere. Hell, it could just be a random prank call. It just happened to come on this night when Jason shows up. I like Alice, the character's death, or Adrienne King's death, in this opening here as well. The ice pick to the side of the head, and if you've seen like the unrated clips or whatever that they have on the Scream Factory box set of the extra gore that they had to trim down, pretty badass ice pick death. It like comes out one side of the face, I think. It's pretty cool. I wish they could have kept it in. I'll say this, like the footage in the unrated versions of the deaths or whatever, or the that they had on the Scream Factory box set, the quality's not that bad. I mean, for being so old and all that, they probably could have just like re-edited it back in, even if it would have been a bit grainy. It still would have been pretty cool to have it there. I would have been fine with it, with a slightly weaker picture quality just during the gore scenes. I would have been fine with that. And they could have just added the music over top of it. That would have been fine. For me, that would have been fine. I do not like this jump scare cat that's going to come to the window. Of course, it's her cat. She's going to feed it, but yeah, not a fan of the jump scare cat. Never have been. Cat said, "Feed me, bitch." Comes the head in the fridge gag. I do like that Jason put his mother's head in the fridge just to fuck with Alice. That's pretty funny. I also like that Jason took the piping hot tea off of the stove cap so it wouldn't make too much noise. Ah, good thinking, Jason. Like, people always theorize like exactly how smart is Jason because of course he would have to be animalistic too, is because he grew up in the woods and everything. But I've never thought of Jason as stupid. Slow, yes, because he's mentally handicapped. I picture him as slow with like the mindset of a child, but not stupid. I don't think of Jason as stupid. I think of him as slow. Got a good score here. Good standard Friday 13th score. Pretty cool. I think there's actually like a clip on YouTube, or maybe the full video of Roger Ebert's review for this. Siskel and Ebert, where they're like, once the kid in the wheelchair got it, I was just done. The reviews for the Friday 13th films always crack me up because they're like so over the top ridiculous and how serious they took this shit. Like how shocking they thought these movies were. Like there's episodes of CSI today that are more hardcore violence wise and feel wise than these movies easily. Yeah, Friday 13th movies are extremely tame by today's standard. Even in like the unrated cuts, except for maybe like Jason Goes to Hell and somewhat of Part 4 because there's some pretty good gore in that. But other than that, these movies are still extremely tame by today's standards. Uh-oh, it's Crazy Ralph. We're getting another We're Doomed speech coming up. Of course, these two characters right here, I think it's supposed to be Jeff and Sandra. Um, But yeah, they really remind me of Kevin Bacon and his woman from the first movie, and of course they got the Practical Joker dude back. Yeah, pretty much these Friday 13th movies are like mainstream exploitation slashers. That's the thing about Friday 13th movies. The Halloween movies, even the bad ones, they would always try to have something a little more to them, like in terms of like crafting suspense and all that. Even when they didn't work, they would always try to do that. Friday 13th movies are just meant to be popcorn flicks. They just fully embrace the exploitation feel of slasher movies and just go with it and just say, let's just have fun. And I think that's a commendable way to go. You don't. I mean, it would be cool, of course. I mean, it is cool if you can have like dynamic character arcs and all that shit and everything and suspense for like a really amazing, well-made slasher. That's fine if you want to go that direction. If you're able to pull it off. But at the same time, if you just want to have fun with it, or with any type of genre, really, then that is fine too. You know, and not everything has to be hoity-toity shit. I mean, it's okay just to have a good time or try to give the viewer a good time. These movies are like the Fast and the Furious of the slasher genre from back in the day, and that's fine. I don't see that as a problem. But yeah, I've always saw these Friday 13th movies as the standard for slasher flicks, but not the rule. Like you can be more than what these movies are if you are a slasher movie, but at the same time, you don't really have to be. If you just want to have fun, that's fine. I'm fine with that. Like if the director just wants to give me a good time, good on you, buddy. I'll say this: the practical Joker character in this, it's a dude that was in like Once Bitten, and he was in Christine as well in a small role. He's fine in terms of performance, and he has like a few good jokes and all that, but the character just completely disappears from the movie. I have no idea why they did that. Like he goes out to the bar and never returns. They also do that with a big group of other counselors in this who are at this counselor training center. You didn't really need to do that. It would have been cool just to have the body count like even way bigger than the first movie, and have Jason just like taking them out left and right, like behind the scenes and all that. I guess they just didn't want to take the time to make like creative deaths for all these people, which I get. But at the same time, don't promise like a super high body count or even higher body count and then not follow through. And the practical Joker must die. Like he must die. I'm sorry, he cannot live. In a way, maybe that makes it like a trend, something that bucks trends or whatever, because the practical Joker did survive. At the same time, I wanted this one to go. It's a POV shot from the woods. Of course, that's Jason watching. It's always fun to rewatch these movies for commentaries, and they always seem to go by way faster during commentaries. I don't know if that's because I just talk through them the whole time or what, but they just seem to like fly by whenever I do commentaries for any of the movies really that I do commentaries for. I think the only one that kind of felt like it took a while was the Snyder Cut, which that's understandable because that thing, from what I remember, is like over 4 hours. Ah, comes Mark, the wheelchair character. In a way, progressive. Ah, here comes the chick that owns Muffin. The one in the very short shorts and the very short shirt. With the amazing ass. About to get shot in the ass. She got hit in the ass. By the Scott character. This Scott character totally reminds me of like an 80s like James Spader or something. She seemed to be okay with the shot in the ass. She smiled about it. Scott's trying to get some. Can't really blame you, Scott. We got the Paul character here giving the speech about the Bears. I will say I think Paul's like the actor's acting there is better than any of the dudes I think from part one, even Kevin Bacon. Comes Walt Gorney as Crazy Ralph. It's cool that they brought back Crazy Ralph. It's pretty damn funny. Amy Steele is Jenny. I will say this character is one of my favorite final girls in the whole franchise, easily. I think she's like a lot of people's favorite final girl. I say she is my favorite final girl, really. Tommy Jarvis is my favorite final hero of these movies. But favorite final girl, if I had to limit it to women, it would definitely be Jenny. Of course, Amy Steele looks real cute in this movie. She was good in April Fool's Day as well. That's one I want to pick up on Blu-ray, April Fool's Day. I always like that one. Some people don't like the twist at the end because it's not like really a slasher, but it fits the title, and in a way, that kind of makes it inventive to me. At least it's different. But yeah, I always liked April Fool's Day. Never seen the remake. I've seen reviews for it, and it looks awful. The remake of April Fool's Day. That shit looks atrocious. Of course, we get an establishing hint here that there is a romance between Paul and Jenny. I also like that they established that she takes like child psychology and all that. Of course, being a setup for the future match against Jason. I prefer the hockey mask because it's cooler and more iconic. And of course, it was used more because of that fact. But the bag in the head is creepy, at least to me. Of course, it brings it back to like the stuff like the town that dreaded sundown, which is probably what it was taken from, and also from to other stuff like let's see, the Elephant Man. Yeah. Of course, we get the famous or the infamous scene here where Paul says, "Keep clean during your periods, ladies. Bears can smell blood." Of course, Paul just got car dust blowed in his face. Kind of a standard joke for a lot of movies, but it works here, in my opinion, even though it's a cliche. Yeah, Amy's still very adorable, very likable on-screen charisma. I wish she could have done more stuff. She kind of dropped out of acting, but she could have been like a popular scream queen. She had the potential to do it. She could have done like a lot of cool 80s like slashers. I know she was offered Friday the 13th Part 3. I wish she would have taken it. I'm sure if she could go back in time, she would have. I really like this. This is when they're giving like the backstory on Jason done in like a campfire story type way. So, it leans to the idea of like you truly don't know what Jason is, but this is like what people theorize. Of course, no one could actually know this. I mean, whether or not it's true or not, if this really happened, if this was actually Jason's origin of how he survived his drowning and all that, grew up in the woods and everything. But it's obviously also the film's way of throwing out an idea to the audience and, giving the idea that this is probably what happened. Which I think works perfectly fine for this particular film. Yeah, the dude that plays Paul really does a good job like selling this whole urban legend story of Jason. Of course, before this jump scare happens here in a minute. That was a good jump scare, Paul. Of course, here's Scott hitting on the hot chick again. I believe this character's name is Terry. But, yeah. He's dancing with the dog to try to win her affections. Put that effort in, Scott. Put that effort in. Jenny whooping Paul's ass at chess. Got the Crazy Ralph death scene coming up here. I've always wondered what it would have been like maybe if they would have left Crazy Ralph alive and he would have kept showing up in the other films. That could have been like a running joke where it was just Crazy Ralph in like on the first at least 8 films or 7, where he was just always like, "You're doomed, you're doomed," to every single person. Like that could have just been like a hilarious joke, like a running gag. That shit could have been funny. They decide to kill him off. I think his death is fine, but at the same time, though, I do think it would have been neat to keep him alive for all the other films, or at least most of the other ones until the actual actor passed away. Of course, we got Big Boob Sandra here trying to talk our man into going to check out the old Crystal Lake campsite. Amy's still giving you a nudity tease. Should have got me some lunch for this commentary. Dinner and a show. Now, up until this point, you haven't really seen Jason or gotten like a clear view of what the bastard looks like. It's just kind of been hinted at. Which, I like that kind of about these early Friday 13s. How it's just like a tease of the killer and all that. Until like the third act. Of course, by the time you get to the later films from like 6 on, by that point you have to show Jason. There's not really any suspense or surprise about who the killer is. I mean, no shit. It's, the J-Man. Here comes Crazy Ralph. Still trying to trick you into thinking he might be Jason, though. But yeah, I've talked about this before in other commentaries, but for me as a kid, like Jason and Freddy were always the shit. Like I liked Michael Myers. I still like Michael Myers. And even though he came before the two of them, for me, Jason and Freddy was always the ones I gravitated to. That's just the way it was for me. Like character-wise and movie-wise, I just gravitated to them more. Of course, Jason being the silent, hulking beast killer, who's like the brutalizer, he'll rip your head out of your ass. And Freddy, of course, being the charismatic, like dream demon entity, played perfectly by Robert Englund. And I like the inventiveness of the kills in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies and like of the stories and stuff. I just thought that was cool when I was a child. I just love seeing the imaginative storylines with the dream aspects and all that. For Friday 13th movies, I just really enjoyed this. I just really enjoyed the spooky atmospheres of the woods and everything. There's just a certain element of the woods that's just more creepy than like a suburban street or whatever with teenagers, like in a Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween. And just the brutalization of the character of Jason and the gore. And of course, Jason being an inherently sympathetic character makes you, regardless of the fact that he's a killer, makes you gravitate to him a little bit somewhat. Unlike somebody like Freddy, who's like fun to watch, but clearly a super evil bastard. Like 100% through and through. Now, I think I mentioned this last commentary too for the first one. Yeah, they're doing that Friday 13th TV series, which from the sounds of everything I've heard about it and read about it, it's going to be more of like a prequel reboot. They'll probably even set it in modern day or in the 2000s or something, where they'll take like elements of these other films and like maybe throw in some ideas about what might have happened in the timeline of the original series. But at the same time, no, they'll place it in modern day, which continuity at this point, Friday 13th, just doesn't really matter. Like they could really just do any type of Friday 13th, and I would just prefer they set it in the 80s, and then they should just let the fans decide where to place it in terms of continuity. Because Friday 13th films, they're just like exploitation flicks. They're just fun exploitation slashers. You don't need anything deep or intricate in these films, really. You just need to give the viewer a good time. That's fine. I'm perfectly fine with that. Like I said, these are like the old school like stuff like Fast and the Furious is now, where they just keep cranking them out. All they need to be is fun entertainment. You do not need like an overly intricate or whatever super developed and amazingly written Tarantino level Friday the 13th film. You just don't. And if you try to do that, you would take away a lot of the fun of these movies and what is appealing about them to begin with. Of course, we got Muffin running into Jason and a flash to or a cut to the hot dog being cooked, which of course is the joke. But yeah, makes you wonder, did Muffin get killed? Because Muffin does show up at the end. And what could have been a dream sequence, maybe it wasn't, but we'll get to that when we get there. What's interesting about and what scares me about Friday the 13th being made today is the whole like stupid political climate we live in, where everything is political, and feminism has like been made political as well. But yeah, like if you made one of these today, you'd be able to keep all the gore you wanted, but they would probably try to force you to like cut down the nudity, which was stupid. You'd be like, what's the point? That's stupid. Slasher films are meant to be edgy. They're meant to be exploitive. That's what they're supposed to be. That's the fun of them. They would see it as like some attack on feminism because women get naked and get killed. The guys get naked and get killed. What the fuck difference does it make if it's a woman? The same thing happens to the men. That's so stupid. That type of thinking for these movies has always been retarded. Of course, I like this dude's joke. Like, what's brown and sits on a piano? Beethoven's last bowel movement. That's some funny shit. Jeff and Sandra still walking through the woods here. Got the scare coming up where they think it's going to be Jason coming up behind them. It's actually the fat cop. There's Muffin. Looks like she's had her ass ripped to pieces. This cop's death has always been kind of funny and kind of interesting because Jason just runs across the road. Jason's just trying to get back to his shack. He's running away from this cop. This cop chases him down, which causes him to get killed. Jason does not want to kill the police officer. Which at this point, Jason is more human, so he probably doesn't want to attract attention. The character becomes more and more supernatural as he goes along. But, yeah. He only kills the cop because the cop just won't let up. This movie's well directed by Steve Miner. Not as good as Sean Cunningham's directing in the last movie, though. It's not as solid. There's the cop chasing Jason. Jason just wants to be left alone, man. This is one hell of a dedicated cop just to chase a random guy who ran into the woods. At this point, we're like 40 minutes into the movie. I enjoy this death with the hammer to the back of the head. This shit is good. I've actually been thinking about watching the movie Cabin Fever again recently, only because I've been marathoning Boy Meets World, and Ryder Strong is in that show. And I actually really like Boy Meets World. I liked it when I was a kid. And so Ryder Strong is in that show as the Sean character, which kind of made me want to rewatch Cabin Fever because I know he's in that as the lead. Which Cabin Fever, I mean, to get off topic here, Cabin Fever was a movie that I've always went back and forth on. Part of me likes it and part of me doesn't like it. My problem with the movie has always been the fact that I like the setup for Cabin Fever, and I like it when the movie goes scary and dark, but I don't think the movie's tone is well balanced. Eli Roth tried to pay a homage to like stuff like Evil Dead and other stuff like Last House on the Left and everything, and old like 60s and 80s like horror movies and slasher flicks that he grew up with. But he tries to make it like a horror comedy. He has no balance to his tone in the movie. The movie's extremely dark at points. Other points, it's like so goofy it almost seems like a parody. Where you got the kid named Pancakes or whatever doing like kung fu. It's like it's from a totally different movie. That's always been my problem with that movie because there's some good like creepy, spooky scenes, like when Ryder Strong or whatever from Boy Meets World is being pushed through the hospital and he looks over and sees this like dude in a creepy bunny suit, kind of like a callback to The Shining, which is pretty cool. But yeah, there's some really good creepy moments in that movie, but it undercuts it with this real over the top comedy, which isn't like so much bad comedy. It feels like it should be in a totally different friggin' movie. I think Cabin Fever would have played much better if it would have just been a serious movie, if they would have just treated it seriously and left out the comedy. I think it could have been a cool like virus infection movie or whatever that eats away at the skin. That could have been cool. The sequels, Cabin Fever 2 and 3, honestly, I barely remember. Here comes the Jason hammer to the back of the head. We have to say it when it hits. It's hammer time! I should have had some alcohol for this commentary. Maybe I'll go straight into doing the commentary for Friday the 13th Part 3 after this. Go have myself a drink or something, get a little bit of candy or something. Come back, do Friday the 13th Part 3. There's the chick that plays Terry wearing no bra with her nipples sticking through her shirt. Women, why do you not dress this way today? Of course, here we got the setup where most of the counselors leave, which I really like that. I would have liked it if there would have been a higher body count. I do like the idea, though, that some of them do get to survive because they did leave. You know, like the coincidence of, hey, you're lucky. That is kind of funny to me. I kind of like the humor of that. That the people who stay in town drinking are the ones that get to live. But at the same time, though, I wish that most of them would have stayed because it's a slasher movie. You want that body count. You know what I'm saying? They pretty much keep the core group here, and the people who are just like extras, they all the ones that get took out of the movie, except for like the comedy relief dude. I like seeing Jason's shadow outside, the reflection of it. It's pretty cool. I wonder if this actually was like a local bar in town that they filmed at. Makes you wonder. part of me wishes that I could like go back in time to the '80s and watch these flicks like on the premiere nights or whatever with the big crowds. That would be so much fun. Here comes some nudity from the Terry character. Every guy in the theater just got a heart on. I've never understood like the feminists and it's not all feminists. Like feminism is not a bad thing. Like the idea of it isn't. But the feminists like radicals or whatever, and the people who make feminism like a radical thing, I've never understood their standpoint of like the chicks get naked and die. It's obviously trying to send some kind of a message about women's promiscuous sexuality. It's the man trying to put them back in the box. It's like no, it's just that's what teenagers do. Like whether you're a male or female, if you know teenagers, they get naked and fuck. That's what they do. I'm sorry, it is that you just have to face that. That is what kids do. It just is. Like if you go to school, most women they're not. I mean, they may be different from the guys, but at the same time, a lot of them want the same thing as the dudes. They do want to fuck somebody they think is hot. I mean, that's just the way it is. I will say this though, there is a good amount of like male nudity in these Friday the 13th movies. But for a lot of slasher films, there's not as much male nudity. I do agree that slasher films in general need more male nudity to kind of help even it out because the chick fans need something. Like the lesbian fans and the straight men, we got the naked chicks. You know, the straight women, they need a little something in general more. You get some male nudity in these films, but in these Friday films at least, but overall in slasher films in general, you don't get as much male nudity. I do think you could add some more of that for the women. At the same time, though, there's not a lot of slasher films made today. It's mostly just like ghost haunting shit, which, while fun and while I do enjoy the Conjuring movies, at least the main Conjuring movies, I enjoy those. Not so much the spinoffs. But, yeah, we're in like this wannabe puritanical movement still, or whatever, that's still around, where it's like frowned upon to try to make edgy, cool, fun entertainment. Instead, everybody just tries to be like this overly silly puritanical thing that they try to enforce in movies and stuff now. And it's been happening since Trump got in office as like some kind of fuck you to Trump or whatever that liberal Hollywood's trying to do to enforce or whatever, which is just silly. Like most audience, I don't even like Trump. I never liked Trump. I don't care about Trump. But he's not president anymore. Move the fuck on, okay? And these are just movies. Like I grew up thinking of movies as movies. Yes, some things in movies can be offensive, but I was always taught like not to really be overly offended at movies because they are just that, movies. Unless the movie is like going out of its way, like to be extremely in your face offensive, like about racism or it's a racist type thing or something or whatever, and it's like going hardcore out of its way to piss you off, or it's like so in your face offensive you can't ignore it. Unless it's on that level, then I really don't see what the big deal is for most things in movies. And like I said, these are slasher flicks, so they're meant to be exploitative. We shouldn't hide from that. We shouldn't be ashamed as a race or a species of wanting to just like have fun and see nudity. We're humans. We like nudity. We like violence in movies because we know it's fake. And I think viewers are educated enough to understand the difference between fake violence and fictional characters in movies from real life. I would hope. And this is like mostly an American thing. In a lot of other countries, like it's much more free to be more edgy. Or not so much edgy, but it's free to have like nudity and stuff in movies and all that. It's considered like an artistic type thing. Here in America, we just like we're very like pro censorship here for some reason. And yeah, China's definitely very censorship there as well. But censoring nudity and stuff, that's definitely more of an American thing from what I've seen. Yeah, the whole censoring of nudity, like American thing and all that, has always kind of made me laugh because it's like we got to censor the nudity. Somebody who watches it might get a hard on. It's like that's the point. If you don't get a hard on, there might be something wrong. Well, not necessarily, but it's okay to get hard, people. I like that she gives this theory about Jason and all that, and thinking about the psychology of Jason. Pretty cool scene. It is funny, like how dismissive Paul and stuff is of Jenny. Jason's a legend, Jenny, a legend. I'm sure today that would be read as the man's putting the woman back in her place, or he's trying to. Which, once again, I have to reiterate this: I have nothing against feminism. If you people want more strong women in movies and all that, that's cool. But this whole radical thing where we're taking it like to like insane levels of just like silliness, that's when it becomes stupid. I really do appreciate the fact, not to keep harping on politics and all that shit, because I don't really care about politics. I'm not political. I mentioned this in other commentaries and reviews. I don't give a shit about politics. But, not to keep harping on it, but I will bring up the fact that I do appreciate that people are wanting to fight for the rights of women and all that kind of stuff. Because I am pro-choice and everything, and I do agree that women deserve and should have autonomy over their bodies. At the same time, though, all these good things, they start out with good causes, and then they just get destroyed and brought to like extremist levels where it just becomes absurd. It always happens with everything. It just seems unavoidable. Almost time for Mark's wheelchair death. Not trying to bring up politics again, but nowadays you probably couldn't kill a guy in a wheelchair just because they would take this as like an attack on the disabled community or something fucking stupid like that. Yes, I have snacks. If you hear it in the background, that's me fiddling. The chick that has the crush on the dude in the wheelchair, she's kind of cute too. I think she still looks good today from what I've seen. Of course, it has to rain. Comes Mark's death coming up. Damn, that's a good death. Double impalement time. This double impalement is actually taken from like an Italian slasher. I think it was Bay of Blood. It may have been twitched. Yeah, I think it was Bay of Blood. They're about to head back to camp, except for this practical joker. Lucky bastard gets out of it. We're like over an hour into this. The cute chick that had a crush on the guy in the wheelchair is about to bite the dust. Man, she was sending some hard ass signals to that dude too. I mean, she was sending hard signals. She might as well have had "Do Me" written on her head. She's dead. Now Jason's dragging her down the stairs. Pretty funny that Jason never leaves a blood trail. That's one clean SOB. Paul, there's someone in this fucking room. Of course, we got that great line coming up. One thing I never liked here is how Jenny doesn't help Paul take out Jason. Like if they both would have double teamed him, it might have been able to take him. This is much more of a human Jason. Oh shit! Looks like Paul's done for. Just you now, Jenny. Run, bitch! He's gonna crash through the window. Ah, gotcha! Here's where we get the finding of the bodies montage thing or whatever. Somewhat, anyway. That was done at the end of the first movie. We get it somewhat here, I mean. I like this big hay fork through the door. Shit is funny. Oh, it's Crazy Ralph. He's in the pantry, which is what he was in the last movie. That's pretty damn funny. I like the fact that Jenny is a much more resourceful hero than Alice in the first movie. Like Alice in the first movie, she was a fighter, she was a scrapper when she had to be, but it also seemed like she mostly just kind of got lucky. Jenny feels like actually competent, which I like. Like how she waits for Jason right here. Boom! Here we go. Kick to the nuts coming up. There's Jason. Oh, my balls! Where's she hiding at, Jason? I always like the fact that Jason has like one eye hole in his sack because he's got like one gimpy eye that's messed up. I believe that's something they carry out through like most of these movies, or all of them, is that Jason's kind of just got like one eye and one messed up eye. Jason tried to lunge out and attack her. I like that, how Jason was like waiting for her. See, I've never thought of Jason as stupid, just slow. I like these shots of the moon and stuff. This is a well executed, well directed chase scene. Not as strong as the one from the ending of the first movie, but pretty good. If you hear a dog barking in the background, that's just my house dog. He likes to stay alert. This scene has always been stupid to me. I know people have said, is it the rat pissing or Jenny pissing? It's obviously Jenny pissing, supposed to be. The piss is just like way too much to be the rat, obviously. But yeah, the fact that she pisses on herself because of a rat after everything that's happened doesn't really make sense for the character when she's been so strong willed up until now. Just really stupid. Never like that. Do like the fact that Jason's like standing on this little tiny pissant chair waiting to impale her with the hay fork, but then it like breaks. I like the fact that this is still like a young Jason who's like learning the trades and tricks of the killing, game, and hasn't like totally perfected it yet, like he will do in later sequels. I like the fact that she whoops Jason's ass with the chair. Bam. Almost time for the cool, like infamous ending of this movie. where she puts on Jason's mother's sweater and tries to trick Jason into thinking that, she's his mother. Really cool psychological way to try to take out Jason in this film. I like the fact that Jason's made like a shrine to his mother's head. Really cool. I love this Betsy Palmer cameo. We get to see what Jason sees from his point of view. He thinks it's Betsy Palmer, thinks it's his mother. And it lets you in on like Jason's mind of like what his mindset is and how he thinks. I like that. Of course, how the hell did Paul know where they were? I mean, how did he coincidentally find them? That is pretty absurd. I like the machete through the shoulder, though. Yeah, your ass is grass, Jason. And he's dead. Not. I like the fact that she pulls off Jason's bag on his head to see his face, but they don't show the audience yet. to the final jump scare here coming up. This whole ending of like, is it a dream or isn't it a dream? It always felt like it was kind of thrown in just to have something that would equal the first movie or whatever, or try to equal the ending of the first movie. In a way, though, I've kind of grown used to it. It works for me fine. But at the same time, I do think it's a weaker way to go out than the ending of the original movie. But I do like the fact now that they leave it up in the air about was Paul killed by Jason or wasn't he? I kind of like that. I think it adds a little bit of a creepy, ending note on. I like to think that Paul did die, even though I'm pretty sure he's meant to have lived. I do like the fact that I do like to think that he did die because I think that adds to the creepy factor of this ending. Is it Jason at the door or something else? Is it Freddy Krueger? No, I don't think so. Who's at the door? Who could it be? Gotta be Jason, right? Oh shit, it's Muffin. Damn, it's Muffin. No, I mean, damn, it's Jason. For a second there, for some reason, I thought Muffin was busted through the window. I like Jason's like hillbilly, weird deliverance look in the ending of this one. I would have been fine if they kept this design for the rest of the series. But I will say, obviously, Part 7 is the definitive version of Jason's look. Well, in terms of the face, I would have been fine. But the hair, yeah, the hair would have to go because it would be sticking out of the hockey mask, which would make him look like a weird hillbilly heavy metal rocker. But yeah, I've grown to like this ending, the whole, like, did Paul live, didn't he? Kind of like that. I like this close up on Mrs. Voorhees' head. I think originally they were supposed to have the eyes open. I'm glad they didn't because that would imply like something like strictly supernatural. They would have to follow upon in another movie, maybe bring Jason's mother back or whatever. And though it would have been cool to see Betsy Palmer again or some version of Jason's mother again, I'm fine with it just being Jason as the supernatural entity. Yeah, so overall, that's Friday the 13th Part 2. Solid, great 4 out of 4. I really enjoy it. I like it better than the first movie. This has been fun rewatching it, and I'll see you guys again with the next video and or commentary. So thank you for watching.